My friends, freedom is not a gift someone hands to you. It is a discovery, a revelation that happens inside you. You see, most people believe freedom comes when the doors open, when the chains fall, when the system changes. But true freedom begins when the mind decides enough is enough. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, I met a young man who grew up in poverty. No shoes, no books, no promise. People told him he would never make it. But every morning, he would look in the mirror and say, "I'm not a prisoner of my past, I'm a pioneer of my future." Today, that same young man runs a company that employs hundreds. And do you know what he told me? He said, "Dr. Munroe, I was free long before I became successful. Freedom is not the absence of barriers, it is the presence of purpose. It is when you decide that no one else will define who you are, what you can do, or how far you can go. You may not control the storm, but you can control your storm. You may not choose where you start, but you can choose where you finish. Look around you. The world is crying for people who will not just exist, but live. People who will not wait for change, but become change. Ordinary people, teachers, mothers, students, workers, have moved mountains not because they were the strongest, but because they believed they could. The truth is this: you will never experience freedom until you stop blaming, stop waiting, and start becoming. The future is not something we enter, it's something we create. So today I challenge you, free your mind from fear, free your heart from bitterness, free your life from excuses, and rise into the destiny that was always waiting for you. Because freedom is not given by governments, signed by leaders, or granted by circumstance. Freedom is birthed in the human spirit, and once you awaken it, no one can ever take it away. So stand tall, walk forward, and remember this truth: you were not born to be trapped by life. You were born to transform it, because the greatest freedom is becoming who you were created to be. Freedom, it's a word that every human being craves. But what if I told you that freedom has nothing to do with open doors, broken chains, or political systems? What if freedom is not something given to you, but something born within you? You see, most people are waiting for life to change before they start living. They say, once I get that job, I'll be free. Once I move out of this place, I'll be free. Once people treat me right, I'll be free. But my friend, that's not freedom, that's permission. And the problem with waiting for permission is, you'll always live at the mercy of someone else's approval. Freedom doesn't begin when the world opens its gates. It begins the moment your mind refuses to be imprisoned by limitations. It starts the moment you stop saying, "I can't," and start asking, "Why not me?" I once met a man who lived his whole life in poverty. He told me that he used to believe money would set him free. But when he finally started earning, he realized he was still a prisoner, this time to fear, comparison, and greed. And he said something I'll never forget. "I thought freedom was about what I could have, but now I know it's about what no one can take from me." That's what freedom truly is. The inner power to stay steady when everything around you shakes. It's the ability to smile when others see darkness. It's the strength to keep walking when your feet are tired and the road feels endless. Freedom is not an outside event. It's an inside awakening. It's when your thoughts align with who you were created to be. Because if your mind is trapped, it doesn't matter how much space you have, you will still feel small. But if your mind is free, it doesn't matter how limited your situation looks, you will still rise. Look at history. Every great movement, every revolution, every breakthrough began with one person who decided to think differently. Someone who said, "I won't let my environment decide my destiny." Nelson Mandela was locked in a cell for 27 years. Yet he said, "I walked out of prison already free," because long before his body was released, his mind was liberated. You cannot cage a free spirit. You can confine the body, but you cannot imprison vision, conviction, or faith. That's why true freedom is never controlled by governments or systems. It's controlled by what you believe. Some of you are still waiting for your circumstances to give you permission to live. You think, when life gets easier, I'll dream again. When people stop judging, I'll speak again. When I have more, I'll start giving. But freedom says, do it now, dream now, speak now, believe now. Because freedom is not found in what you own, it's found in what owns you. If fear owns you, you'll live as a slave even in luxury. But if faith owns you, you'll walk in freedom even in the desert. And let me tell you this, you were not created to survive under the weight of other people's opinions. You were designed to carry the weight of your own purpose. Every time you let fear decide your actions, you hand your freedom away. Every time you let doubt silence your voice, you build invisible walls around your potential. But every time you choose courage, you break those walls. Every time you rise after failure, you take back another piece of your freedom. Every time you forgive when you could hate, you step into a higher level of strength. That's why freedom isn't something that happens overnight. It's something you practice daily. It's in every decision, every response, every choice to keep faith when quitting seems easier. You can't live free with a fearful mind because fear builds prisons without bars. But faith builds bridges out of impossible places. The truth is, no one can truly enslave you unless you believe them. You are what your mind accepts. And the moment your mind rejects limitation, the world around you begins to shift. Because everything begins with thought, every movement, every invention, every victory. So if you truly want freedom, don't wait for life to hand it to you. Create it. Start with your mind. Free yourself from comparison. Free yourself from the pressure to be perfect. Free yourself from the lie that you are not enough. Because when the mind is liberated, the body follows. You will start walking differently. You will start speaking differently. And suddenly, what once looked impossible will start moving toward you. Because the world responds to a free soul, a soul that knows who it is, what it stands for, and where it's going. Freedom is not a location, it's not a title, it's not wealth, it's awareness. It's the decision to think higher, to believe deeper, and to live fuller. It begins the moment you realize that no matter where you are, no matter what's been done to you, no matter how heavy your chains feel right now, your mind still belongs to you. Purpose of that one word separates those who merely exist from those who truly live. Because without purpose, life becomes an endless search for meaning, and freedom becomes just a dream. You see, people think freedom is about doing whatever you want, but that's not freedom, that's confusion. Real freedom is not the absence of rules, it's the presence of reason. It's knowing why you're here, what you're meant to do, and where you're meant to go. You can't be free until you understand your purpose, because purpose gives direction to your freedom. Without it, even the open road feels like a maze. When you don't know why you exist, you'll spend your life trying to fit into spaces never designed for you. You'll chase approval, money, and attention, thinking they will give you freedom. But those things can't fulfill what only purpose can explain. There's a story I often tell. A young woman once said to me, "I just want to be free from expectations, from pressure, from people's opinions." I smiled and said, "Then find your purpose." Because once you know your purpose, you stop asking for permission to be yourself. You stop begging people to understand your vision. You stop fearing rejection, because purpose gives you identity, and identity gives you freedom. Purpose doesn't come from your job title, your degree, or your social status. It comes from within, the part of you that existed before anyone's opinion. It's not something you create. It's something you discover. It's the quiet voice that says, "This is who I am," even when no one else believes it. Think about it. Every bird is designed to fly. Every fish is designed to swim. Freedom for a bird is in the sky. Freedom for a fish is in the water. Each finds freedom when it functions according to its design. So the question isn't, how can I be free? The real question is, what was I designed to do? Because when you operate outside your design, you call frustration life. But when you live your purpose, you call freedom peace. Purpose gives meaning to pain. It turns trials into training. It transforms failure into foundation. The moment you understand your purpose, your past no longer feels like punishment. It feels like preparation. Every setback becomes a setup for something greater. Because now you can see the reason behind the struggle. And that's when you realize you were never being broken, you were being built. So many people are living trapped, not because someone is holding them back, but because they've never taken the time to ask, why am I here? They copy trends, follow crowds, and chase what everyone else calls success. But deep inside, they feel empty. And the truth is, success without purpose is just a decorated prison. You can be rich, famous, admired, and still be miserable if you have no reason for what you're doing. But when you discover purpose, you unlock a power that no one can take away. Purpose becomes your compass. It gives direction to your dreams. You stop being tossed around by the opinions of others because you've anchored your identity in something deeper. You stop competing with people because you understand your race is unique. You stop chasing temporary pleasures because you've tasted eternal significance. Purpose also protects your freedom. when you know why you're here. You stop giving energy to things that drain you. You stop trying to please everyone because you understand not everyone is meant to walk your path. You stop fighting battles that don't matter because you've learned to save your strength for what does. And yes, purpose demands responsibility. Freedom without purpose becomes chaos. Purpose teaches discipline. It shapes freedom into something powerful. A person with purpose doesn't need someone to motivate them every day. Their purpose is their motivation. They wake up with clarity, they walk with confidence, and they rest with peace. Look at those who changed the world, not because they were born rich, not because they had the best education, but because they discovered their reason for being. Martin Luther King Jr. had a purpose that no prison could silence. Mother Teresa had a purpose that no poverty could crush. And when you look at your own life, you must ask, what am I living for that's bigger than me? Because until you find that answer, you'll keep mistaking activity for progress. Purpose is what gives freedom its meaning. It's what separates movement from direction. Many people are moving fast but going nowhere. They're busy but not effective, loud but not impactful. But when you live with purpose, even your silence speaks, even your waiting works, even your failures teach. You'll notice that once you begin living on purpose, you no longer need validation. You no longer fear rejection. Because you're not driven by opinion, you're guided by conviction. The world might misunderstand you, but your spirit will be at peace. Because deep down, you'll know you're walking the path you were created for. And that's why purpose is the foundation of freedom. Because freedom without purpose is like a ship without a compass, adrift, lost, and vulnerable to every wave. But the moment you align your freedom with your purpose, the wind starts working for you, not against you. You begin to move with confidence, not confusion. You begin to live with vision, not survival. Every person was born for something. You were not created to wander. You were created to work towards something meaningful. Purpose doesn't imprison you. It defines your boundaries so you can soar higher. Because when you know who you are and why you're here, you are finally free to live, not as a shadow of expectation, but as a reflection of destiny. When we look at history, it's easy to think that greatness was reserved for a chosen few, the gifted, the talented, the lucky. But the truth is, every extraordinary story you've ever heard began with an ordinary person who simply chose to believe when everyone else doubted. Belief is what separates those who dream from those who do. It's the invisible force that turns impossible into inevitable. Every great movement, every invention, every transformation started with one person who refused to let circumstances define their destiny. They were not the strongest, not the richest, not the most educated, but they were believers. They believed that there was something greater inside them than the limitations around them. There's something powerful about belief. It gives sight to the blind before the eyes ever open. It allows a person to walk toward a vision no one else can see. Belief makes you speak life when everything looks dead. It gives courage to the heart and direction to the soul. I once met a man who had nothing but a dream and a conviction. He told me that every night he would close his eyes and see himself standing on stages speaking to thousands. Even though at that time he could barely afford a microphone, people laughed at him, mocked his passion, and told him to be realistic. But he said something that struck me deeply. Their doubt became my fuel. Years later, that same man became one of the most respected voices in his field. Not because he had connections, not because he had resources, but because he believed when no one else did. Belief is the birthplace of transformation. It takes an ordinary person and gives them extraordinary endurance. It makes you rise when you're tired, push when you're weak, and fight when no one's watching. You see, belief doesn't guarantee that life will be easy. It guarantees that you won't give up. Every time you choose to believe in something greater than your fear, you shift the atmosphere around you. You open doors that logic says should stay closed. You turn pain into purpose and struggle into strength. Because belief doesn't ignore reality, it redefines it. Think about a seed. When you plant it in the ground, it disappears beneath the soil, surrounded by darkness. From the outside, it looks like it's been buried. But in truth, it's been planted. And the difference between being buried and being planted is belief. The seed believes that the darkness is not the end. It believes that if it can just push through, it will one day touch the sunlight. That's how belief works. It allows you to see the light before it appears. Ordinary people become extraordinary not because life treated them differently, but because they thought differently. They decided that failure was not final, that rejection was redirection, and that every setback was a setup for a comeback. They turned pain into wisdom and doubt into determination. Belief creates resilience. It gives you the ability to stand when you've been knocked down, to smile when life says cry, to move forward when your legs shake. People often say, "I'll believe it when I see it," but the extraordinary ones know the truth. You see it when you believe it. Belief also changes your identity. When you believe in yourself, you stop seeking validation from others. You stop asking the world for permission to shine. You stop measuring your worth by the standards of those who don't understand your vision. You start walking with quiet confidence, not arrogance, because you know who you are and what you carry. Belief makes ordinary people do impossible things. It was a belief that made a shepherd boy face a giant with a sling and a stone. It was belief that made a young woman cross oceans to serve the poor. It was a belief that made a dreamer look at injustice and say, "I have a dream." Every breakthrough, every name that changed the world began with belief. And it's not just the belief that things will get better. It's the belief that you can make them better. It's knowing that your life has significance, that your voice matters, that your actions carry weight. You might not have everything you need, but belief turns little into enough. Belief is what keeps you going when there's no applause. It's what reminds you of your worth when no one else sees it. It's what whispers, "Keep going," when the noise of doubt grows loud. Ordinary people don't wait for the perfect moment. They create it with belief. So many people are waiting for someone to validate them before they take the first step. But the truth is, no one is coming to hand you belief. It's something you must choose. You can't outsource faith. You can't borrow conviction. You must decide deep within yourself that no matter what happens, you will keep believing in your purpose, your vision, and your God-given potential. Because belief has a strange way of turning what's invisible into reality. It calls things that are not as though they were. It sees opportunity in adversity and light in darkness. Belief does not promise a life without pain, but it does promise that pain will never have the final say. And when an ordinary person starts believing in themselves, in their purpose, and in the possibility of a greater tomorrow, something powerful happens. The world begins to notice. Doors begin to open. And what once seemed impossible suddenly looks inevitable. Because belief doesn't just change your story, it changes the way the world reads it. Freedom sounds beautiful when we say it, but it is not free. Every form of freedom carries a cost, and that cost is responsibility. Responsibility is the invisible weight that builds your strength, the silent discipline that shapes your destiny. Many people want freedom, but few are willing to pay the price that comes with it. Because freedom without responsibility is chaos, and chaos eventually becomes another kind of prison. You see, real freedom is not about doing whatever you want. It's about mastering yourself so completely that you can choose what's right even when it's hard. It's easy to point fingers to blame systems, people, or circumstances, but as long as you blame, you hand your power away. Responsibility is the moment you take that power back and say, "I am accountable for my life, my choices, my growth, my future." There was once a young man who told me, "I just want to be free from rules, from people telling me what to do." I looked at him and said, freedom isn't the absence of rules, it's the understanding of purpose. Because when you understand your purpose, responsibility no longer feels like a burden, it feels like alignment. You start to realize that discipline isn't restriction, it's protection. It keeps you on the path to where you're meant to go. Every dreamer, every achiever, every leader who has ever changed the world learned this truth. You cannot rise higher than your willingness to take responsibility. You can't grow beyond what you're willing to own. If you want to be free financially, take responsibility for your spending. If you want to be free emotionally, take responsibility for your reactions. If you want to be free spiritually, take responsibility for your choices. Freedom demands maturity, because without maturity, freedom will destroy you. Look at history. Nations have fought wars for freedom, but every time the battle ends, the real test begins. Can we handle what we've been given? Many people pray for freedom, but are not prepared for what it requires. Because when you are free, you no longer have excuses. You can't say, "They stopped me," or "They held me back." Freedom removes your excuses and places the mirror in your hands. And in that reflection, you see the truth that your greatest limitation is often not the world around you, but that the mindset within you. Responsibility means you stop waiting for someone else to fix what you can change. It means you stop complaining about what you tolerate. It means you stop expecting others to do for you what you were born to do for yourself. Because real power comes when you realize that no one is coming to save you, but you can save yourself by choosing differently today. Responsibility also demands consistency. It's not something you do once and forget. It's a daily commitment to show up, to grow up, to rise up, even when no one notices, even when it's inconvenient, even when it costs you comfort. Responsibility says, I will do what's right, not what's easy. It says, I will lead myself before I lead others. There's something deeply liberating about taking responsibility for your own life. It might feel heavy at first, but it's the kind of weight that builds strength. It shapes your character, sharpens your focus, and gives you authority over your destiny. Because when you accept responsibility, you stop being a passenger in your story and become the author of it. Think about it. Every person you admire for their strength, their courage, their success, they didn't get there by chance. They got there by choice. They decided to take responsibility when others looked for someone to blame. They stayed accountable when others made excuses. They grew when others quit. That's what responsibility does. It separates the free from the fearful, the leaders from the followers, the builders from the blamers. And sometimes responsibility means forgiving yourself for the mistakes you've made and still moving forward. It's about saying, yes, I failed. That failure doesn't define me. What defines me is what I do next. Because responsibility doesn't mean perfection. It means ownership. It means learning, adjusting, and trying again. Many people are trapped in cycles of frustration not because they lack opportunity, but because they refuse to take ownership. They wait for ideal conditions, for support, for validation. But the truth is, responsibility is what unlocks opportunity. When you start taking care of what you already have, more starts coming to you. Life rewards those who manage what's in their hands, not those who wish for what's in someone else's. Responsibility is also the foundation of trust. When people see you handle what's yours with care, they begin to trust you with more. Freedom without responsibility leads to loss, but freedom with responsibility leads to legacy. Because responsibility is the bridge between desire and destiny. It's what turns intention into impact. The moment you take responsibility, you change your future. You begin to see that you're not powerless, you're powerful. You realize that freedom isn't about what others give you, it's about what you do with what you already have. Responsibility makes you dependable, it makes you focused, it makes you wise. It turns ordinary people into leaders and followers into visionaries. And that's the paradox of freedom. The more responsibility you embrace, the freer you become. Because when you control your mind, your emotions, and your actions, nothing outside of you can control your peace. Responsibility is not a punishment, it's the path to power. It's what transforms freedom from a dream into a reality. There is a freedom far greater than any political right, any social privilege, or any financial success. It is the freedom of becoming who you were created to be. That kind of freedom cannot be granted by laws or taken away by people. It comes from within, from the deep awareness that you were designed with purpose, intention, and destiny. Most people spend their lives trying to be accepted, trying to fit in, trying to please, and in doing so, they lose the very essence of who they are. They become strangers to their own potential, living lives that look successful on the outside, but feel empty on the inside. Because the greatest prison is not made of iron bars, it's made of fear, comparison, and self-doubt. Becoming who you were created to be requires courage. It means standing apart when it's easier to blend in. It means listening to your inner voice when the world is shouting its opinions. It means trusting the process even when you don't understand the plan. Freedom is not found in pretending to be someone else. It's found in embracing the person you were born to become. So many people live confined by expectations of family, culture, society, and sometimes even religion. They spend their entire lives chasing standards that were never meant for them. They do what's expected, not what's inspired. And one day they look back and realize they never really lived, they just followed. But there comes a moment when you have to ask yourself, who am I when the noise stops? Who am I when no one is watching? Who am I when there's nothing left to prove? That moment is the beginning of true freedom. Becoming who you were created to be is not about becoming famous, rich, or admired. It's about becoming whole. It's about alignment when your words match your beliefs, your actions match your values, and your life matches your calling. That's when peace replaces pressure, when purpose replaces confusion, and when freedom replaces fear. You begin to realize that you were never meant to compete with others, because your assignment is unique. The sun doesn't compete with the moon. Both shine when it's their time. You don't have to be perfect to be authentic. You just have to be honest. Honest about your strengths, your weaknesses, your hopes, and your wounds. The world doesn't need another copy. It needs the real you, because the real you carries something no one else can offer. The real you carries an answer to a problem that only you were born to solve. And the longer you hide behind who you think you should be, the longer the world waits for the person you were destined to become. But becoming yourself is not easy. It demands pruning. It demands letting go of people who no longer align with your growth, of habits that no longer serve your purpose, and of fears that no longer deserve your energy. You can't become who you were created to be while holding on to what was never meant to stay. Growth is uncomfortable because it requires leaving the familiar, but it's the only path to freedom. And yes, people will misunderstand you. They will question your choices, your direction, even your faith. But that's okay. Because when you start living true to yourself, you'll realize that not everyone was meant to understand your journey. Some were only meant to witness it. Freedom means being okay with being misunderstood because you understand yourself. There's a story I once heard about a young eagle raised among chickens. It scratched the ground for food, pecked at crumbs, and never looked up. One day it saw another eagle soaring high above the mountains and said, "I wish I could fly like that." The older eagle looked at it and said, "You can, because you are one of us." And in that moment, it stretched its wings for the first time and realized what it was born to do. That's what happens when you discover who you were created to be. You stop pecking at the ground and start soaring where you belong. So many people are eagles living like chickens, capable of greatness, but trapped by the comfort of the familiar. They keep their wings folded because they fear falling. But you will never know your strength until you dare to fly. The sky was not created for the fearless. It was created for the faithful. Those who trust that their wings will work once they leap. The freedom of becoming yourself means accepting that your journey will look different. It means being patient when others rush ahead and being humble when success comes your way. It means not measuring your worth by someone else's highlight reel, because when you know who you are, comparison loses its power. You stop trying to impress and start trying to impact. You stop chasing validation and start chasing vision. The greatest freedom comes when you no longer need to be accepted because you've accepted yourself. You realize that your life was never meant to be a reflection of others' expectations, but a revelation of divine intention. Every scar, every struggle, every victory, they're all part of your becoming. You were shaped not by what you went through, but by how you grew through it. Becoming who you were created to be is not a destination. It's a lifelong journey. Every day, you peel away another layer of fear, doubt, and insecurity and reveal a little more of your true self. Every decision, every challenge, every act of faith brings you closer to your essence, to the version of you that was in the Creator's mind long before you were born. Because when you finally start walking in alignment with your purpose, everything changes. You stop forcing doors open and start walking through the ones that were meant for you. You stop begging for opportunities and start attracting them. You stop living in reaction to life and start living in creation of it. That is the highest form of freedom, not living to become someone else, but living to become who you were always meant to be. My friends, freedom is not a destination you arrive at. It's a journey you choose every single day. It begins in the mind, where you decide to stop living as a prisoner of fear and start thinking like a person of purpose. It grows when you align your freedom with responsibility, when you stop waiting for change and start becoming the change. Freedom is built through belief, the belief that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they trust the greatness placed within them. And through it all, freedom is not about what the world gives you. It's about what you give back to the world. It's about living with purpose, walking with conviction, and believing that your life carries meaning, that you were born for something bigger than survival. Every one of us was created with wings, but not everyone learns to fly. The ones who do are those who stop blaming, stop fearing, and start becoming. Because the greatest prison is the one built in the mind, and the greatest escape is the moment you realize that everything you need to rise has always been inside you. So if you truly want freedom, stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Stand up, take responsibility, believe again, and step into the person you were created to be. Because real freedom doesn't come when the world changes, it comes when you do.